Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rebuilding Stronger Together, a deep dive into the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative. I'm Nicole Malaku, the Executive Director of the National Partnership for New Americans. NPNA is a national coalition of the nation's 41 largest immigrant and refugee advocacy organizations working in 37 states to promote immigrant integration through policy, advocacy, and wraparound services. We are pleased that we are a critical player in economic recovery, and especially in our home state of Chicago, Illinois, working closely with the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative. Today's webinar is a critical conversation that is around a model that can be lifted up nationally around equitable relief and economic recovery. We are a proud partner, as I mentioned before, of the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative, CCCRI, as we will mention throughout the webinar, that will make sure that nonprofits and small businesses have access to federal, state, and local resources in response to COVID-19 and increase the capacity of suburban nonprofits to deliver programs and services in communities of Cook County. Over the past year, NPNA has provided navigation and support to nonprofits around the PPP program, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the Illinois Business Interruption Grant Program, Cook County Small Business Grant Program, and the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. In addition, through our partnership with CCCRI, Cook County, Illinois also joined NPNA's national network of cities and counties, Cities for Citizenship, or C4C, becoming an important partner to the network and a model for other localities across the nation. Through our education and outreach initiatives, NPNA has contacted over 5,000 small businesses and nonprofits in Cook County, providing technical assistance to more than 300 organizations on their PPP applications. In collaboration with CCRI partners, NPNA has organized and coordinated webinars around topics such as accessing PPP, workforce development, and nonprofit service delivery that has reached over 8,000 viewers. NPNA sees that our economic recovery is tied to our work with municipal partners. We see CCRI as a blueprint for other counties and cities across the country to learn from and replicate, and especially with our partners in the C4C network. Currently, Cities for Citizenship is a network of 101 cities and counties across the country working to promote citizenship and wraparound services for new Americans. C4C has experienced the need to implement economic relief and recovery to support communities that have been hardest hit by the pandemic. To hear firsthand how this model has supported a local small business, I'd like to introduce today's first speaker, Peggy Verona, who was supported by part of our work. Peggy, I'll turn it over to you. Peggy, you might be on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being here. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in private practice. While I live in Cook County, my practice is based in McHenry County. The focus of my practice is early intervention, and that is part of the special ed program. It's a national program, of course, and that deals with children 0 to 3 and their families, and I work with their social emotional counseling, resource connection, and transition to schools. And I work in the home. And so when COVID hit and DHS shut us down, there wasn't anything coming in financially for me. One of the skills I have used with my families is finding resources. So when this hit, I decided I would use those skills to benefit myself and finding some resources for myself. The first thing I looked at was a PPP loan, and I received a small one on the very last day, at the very moment before they ran out of money, and was thrilled to get it. Then I kept looking, and I found that the Cook County had a recovery grant lottery and applied for it. And I was turned down. And it was Kevin, actually, who helped me apply for it, and later helped me get the 1099 I needed for my taxes. And I was quite appreciative of his responsiveness. I don't always see people who are in high positions being so responsive, and I was really appreciative. So lo and behold, in December, I got an email saying, congratulations, you won this lottery, for which I questioned because it's not often you get uh, an email saying you won this and it's not a scam. So I quickly found out that it was not a scam, and a couple weeks later received the money and was quite grateful. So how did it help my business? Well, certainly it allowed me to use it for supplies as I needed to change the platform. DHS took a while to allow us to do telehealth. And so how do I work with children online? Early intervention, so I had to find webinars, books. I know how to coach. I needed to retool and refine my skills in that area. So webinars, books, workshops to help me with that. I think the best thing that it has done for me was make me a better social worker. As I said, early intervention is a coaching model, and we work in the natural environment, which is generally speaking in the home. So one of my favorite programs, and I'm working towards that, and we'll be using some of the money to increase that, is a program. It's called I'm losing my mind here. It's a program that is TheraPlay, sorry. And it is a research and attachment-based program that increases the positive interaction between parent and child. As a result, that helps with the behavior, increases parent positive interaction and self-confidence in their parenting. And as a result, my outcomes have been better because I'm not doing the work. I'm coaching the parent who then has to do it for the child. So that's been really exciting. I'm also able to service more families because McHenry County is a giant county. It goes all the way up to the border. And so I would not be driving there. So I'm able to service that. I'm also able to see some parents together because I can do it at night and not have to worry about that. So that's been wonderful. So I was really, really pleased with the Cook County when they paired with the SBA and used some of the CARES money to target small businesses. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart that you were able to do this.
Thank you, Peggy. It's really been our privilege to be able to know that just having you person to walk you through some of the process was helpful to you and so many others that just needed a little bit of help to understand the process and how to navigate that. And we saw everything from your restaurant owners to your practice to small retail shops being able to step forward and take advantage of this program. So we do the work in honor of people like you who are keeping our families together and providing critical services and also helping to move us on our way to economic recovery. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our partners from the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative, starting with Xochitl Flores, Chief of the Cook County Bureau of Economic Development, and Dominic Tosi, Deputy Bureau Chief of the Cook County Bureau of Economic Development, who will talk more around the initiative, the partnership, and the impact of the model, and will share many highlights from the Rebuilding Stronger Together Impact Report. Xochitl, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicole. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nicole, again for coordinating this webinar. And thank you to those of you joining us today and for your interest in our work. As Nicole said, my name is Xochitl Flores, and I am the Bureau Chief for the Cook County Bureau of Economic Development. In the years since the COVID-19 pandemic began, Cook County and other communities across the country have faced unprecedented challenges, many of which continue to affect each one of us. In addition to its public health toll, the pandemic has also brought economic hardship on many of our communities, from individuals who have faced reduced hours or have lost their jobs, to small business owners who have had to reinvent their businesses oftentimes, and in the face of these public health measures. So Cook County, and in particular the Bureau of Economic Development, I mean, we have really recognized early on how women, people of color, people with disabilities, and those from low-income communities and others suffering from historic disinvestment have been most susceptible to this economic hardship. So as a result, we have really made it a point throughout the year to strengthen and build upon our longstanding commitment to fostering equitable economic development in Cook County. And this commitment to equity has enabled us to really target our resources to those with the greatest need this past year. And throughout all of our efforts, whether it's a business recovery initiative or a community recovery initiative to help residents, we really have partnered with a local network of organizations to maximize the impact of each of our programs. And these partnerships are key in supporting the thousands of residents and businesses this past year. So today I'll talk a bit about what we are doing, what we have done, and obviously at the end, take any questions that you might have, because we want others to learn from what we were able to put together. And obviously we continue to evolve, we continue to learn from what worked and what didn't work, but I am more than happy to share our learnings and hoping that others can benefit from this. Next slide, please. And just quickly to provide a little bit of a framework and to let people know, because I know we're joined from others that might not be as familiar with Cook County. The map on this slide shows our county, and central in our region is the city of Chicago. So a little bit about an overview of what we do. This region has approximately 8.5 million individuals, with 60% of the individuals within Cook County, so approximately 5.2 million. The work of the Bureau of Economic Development and our focus is really to lead and promote equitable economic growth and community development. And we do this by supporting affordable housing, thriving neighborhoods, and supporting the growth of our businesses and providing critical support services. So we really are holistic in our approach and look at both communities and businesses to really develop a cohesive model to recovery. Next slide, please. As we all know, and as we hear time and time again, COVID-19 really exacerbated existing racial and economic inequities throughout our country. It has impacted women, communities of color, and small businesses the hardest. We understood early on that in order to address the issues we're facing, we really needed to take a step back and develop a comprehensive, holistic framework that addressed the needs of both residents and businesses. I'm very fortunate that within the Cook County Bureau of Economic Development, we have many great public servants that were ready to roll up their sleeves and call all of our partners to really brainstorm how we can leverage our skill sets, our learnings, our networks in order to develop a comprehensive approach to addressing this pandemic. And the foundation of all of this was guided by an equity model that enabled us to really target the communities that had the highest need and the highest impact of this pandemic. So we're very targeted. We work very closely with our data analysts to look at where COVID was impacting individuals and really targeted our resources across the board to address those areas that were suffering the most. Next slide, please. So we were fortunate that our team internally really jumped in and formed committees to look at a comprehensive approach to both residents and businesses. Because they quickly mobilized In the first 2 months of the pandemic, this Bureau of Economic Development team activated a network of small business and community partners that quickly provided educational webinars, one-on-one loan application assistance, and connected vulnerable businesses to a variety of lenders and financial resources. And this was like within the first few months of the pandemic, because we were getting so many calls from small businesses that were hearing about PPP, but yet could not access those resources. So fortunately, through this large network that included NPNA, we really had a strong network of individuals that were on the phones, talking to individuals, helping them access the resources that were needed. And oftentimes what people needed was just having an entity that was a trusted resource that could provide that information. So through our networks of partners, we had webinars. We had over 4,000 people participate in our initial webinars. We assisted over 500 businesses, and this was in the first few months of the pandemic. And we helped businesses access many loans. Early on, it was PPP. And then we utilized this information later on to continue to evolve the programs that we were providing small businesses. But this initial learning, the surveys that we conducted of our businesses, really laid a strong foundation for how we would address this pandemic in the long run. So the business side was one component. The next slide, please. The other side of our programming focused on not just providing the technical assistance to the businesses, we really wanted to partner with them. So our technical assistance network really sprang into action to provide immediate support and to eliminate barriers that many of our small businesses were facing with applying for federal grant programs and loans, and understanding the variety of information circulated. In those first few months, I was even overwhelmed with all the information that was being provided by the state and federal resources. So again, this network of trusted resources was really critical. So partners like the American Business Immigration Coalition, NPNA, even the Illinois Restaurant Association really partnered with us to develop webinars that were very targeted to our businesses and making sure that they received the information that was needed. Additionally, our team, next slide, please. Our team within the Bureau focused on immediate critical social service needs. And in the beginning of the pandemic, again, similar to what we were doing with our businesses, we were also conducting a survey of many of our social service partners to understand what was most critically needed at that time. So we quickly dedicated some resources, provided over $150,000 to support shelters, which were providing over 200,000 shelter nights and over 600,000 meals to county residents. So this important work, these rapid response efforts really were critical to us learning what was happening on the ground level, to really establishing strong partnerships with the local organizations that were delivering the services, and really to then utilize that information to develop the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative. So next slide, please. So early on, we were very frugal because we did not know what type of resources were going to come down the pipeline. We developed a rapid response effort with county resources. We really looked at our CDBG funding, the county's corporate funding, to figure out what was most needed and how the county could meet those most critical needs for businesses and residents. Like I said, collecting data and developing those partnerships was critical. So we learned from it. And fortunately, after the CARES Act was approved, the Cook County Bureau of Economic Development allocated $77 million of our CARES funding to support residents and businesses impacted by the pandemic. So using this funding, the county launched a suite of community recovery initiatives in areas including critical social support services, small business assistance, workforce development, and housing assistance. And at the foundation of our work, we created an equitable distribution model to ensure that each of our programs supported our most vulnerable businesses and residents, often overlooked and located in areas of our county that have suffered the most disinvestment. But critical was us recognizing that we couldn't do it alone. These unprecedented times required really strong partnerships between government, the private sector, and philanthropic organizations to create a comprehensive path to recovery. So that was instrumental as we thought about our Cook County Community Recovery Initiative. So next slide, please. In terms of small business, the county invested over $29 million in various programs to assist small businesses, gig workers, and manufacturers. In a very short period of time, we provided almost 1,700 businesses with $10,000 grants, as you heard about earlier. And we provided over 3,600 businesses with critical business advising. The critical business advising was so important because it's not just about providing funding to businesses, but to be there as a partner in helping them weather the storm. So our network of business service organizations was really critical to ensuring that we had the available resources to talk to the businesses and guide them through the next rounds of funding. Well, we saw that over 60% of our applicants for these programs were people of color, 45% were women, and I recognize that we must continue to strengthen our small business ecosystem to address this disproportionate impact to these communities. One of the huge learnings from this past year, specific to suburban Cook County, is that this area really has business service organizations that are a bit fragmented in the support that they provide to our businesses, our small businesses within suburban Cook County. That's why we quickly activated to create a network of business support organizations, because not only did we want to provide that direct assistance to the businesses, but we knew that it was critical to strengthen organizations such as NPNA and other business service organizations that are within our suburban Cook County areas. So we partnered with over 40 organizations. Some were larger in size that provided resources, even not just to businesses, but also to our business service organizations. So we're continuing to evolve. We're learning from that work and figuring out how we continue to support both the BSOs and our small businesses. The next slide, please. Thank you. So as you can see from this slide, many of our small business that we assisted, like I said, resources went to people of color. Nearly 60% went to people of color. I think early on, we were one of the few organizations that were also providing grants to gig workers. So we saw many gig workers applying to our program. Initially, we had a loan program because we were looking at county resources to deploy this loan program. After the CARES funding came to the county, we were actually fortunate to be able to make those loans forgivable loans. So many of our business partners and gig workers were benefited from those resources. We also saw that many of our small businesses that received the grant had fewer than 20 employees. Gig workers had annual incomes that were very small, and they also received $10,000 grants. So we're fortunate that we were very targeted in our resources, and that with the CARES funding, we utilized that funding to continue to support gig workers, manufacturers, and small businesses. The next slide sort of shows a representation of where we provided these grants. Over 1,600 were small business grants and technical assistance recipients. We had nearly 2,000 small businesses that received technical assistance that were within the city of Chicago. One of the things about our resources is that typically our resources go to suburban Cook County areas of the county. The city of Chicago receives their own allocation of funding. But through this program, we were able to really partner with philanthropy in the private sector to develop a robust network of business service organizations. So we leverage our funding alongside that of philanthropic partners in the private sector to develop this robust model that continues to get supported by us in philanthropy. So we think that this model is something that really needs to gain national attention, and hopefully others will utilize these learnings to develop these types of robust models. We realize that it's imperative during these times for government agencies, philanthropy, and the private sector to not only utilize their resources, but their expertise to help businesses weather this storm and just recover from this pandemic. So I'm very glad to see that our resources really went across the county. Like I said earlier, our equitable distribution model really was the foundation for how we allocated resources. And when you overlay our equitable distribution model with where we really targeted our resources, you'll see that it's very aligned. Our communities that have suffered the most disinvestment have really benefited from these resources, and that's something that we're committed to continuing to grow. Next slide, please. So over the years, the county has really made an a commitment to the economic growth of the southern areas of our county. This area includes over 45 municipalities. It has nearly 700,000 individuals, residents, and over 35,000 businesses that produce over 42 billion in economic output. But this area was very disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and it had an unemployment rate roughly doubling to about 21%. We were fortunate that over the years, we knew that this was an area of our county that needed additional resources. So about 2 years ago, we helped launch the Southland Development Authority. That's focused on bringing in catalytic, transformative investments into this area of our county. So they are a strong partner that work closely with us to develop very robust business services to businesses that were within our southern areas of our county. They were able to conduct outreach and support over 10,000 businesses. They activated a large network of other support services, banking institutions that have been working very closely with these businesses. And we're continuing to grow the partnership with the Southland Development Authority to be very targeted in our approach to addressing the needs of our southern areas of our county. So now a bit about the learnings of this past year in terms of small businesses. A key activity is that we need to coordinate. Coordination with partners is really key. We would not have been able to do what we did this past year without having this robust network of over 40 business service organizations. Because of this strong coordination, we were able to disperse over 1,700 grants to small businesses and thousands of hours of technical assistance that's still continuing today. Having the partners that were on the ground, literally knocking on doors with our small businesses really made a difference. Early on, as I said, when we were hearing from small businesses and when we were surveying them, we knew that these small businesses were not accessing the resources that they needed. They didn't have established partnerships with banking institutions, with attorneys. So this network was critical because we were a trusted resource. All of our partners had been trained on how to work directly with these businesses and really help them navigate all the resources that were being provided by the state, by the federal government, by the county, by their local municipalities, to make sure that they access the right resources for their businesses. Along the way, these BSOs really became a network that provided resources to one another. They shared learnings, they grew together, and we're continuing to support this network. We're currently looking to attract more partners because, as I said earlier, we see that the network of support, specifically within suburban Cook County, really needs to be amplified. We need to find more service organizations that are working directly with these businesses. And that's something that we're working on with all of our partners. We're sitting down, sharing what worked, what didn't work, and they're helping us develop our small business agenda going forward. Now, a little bit about the resident side and community development side. I have with us today my deputy that has really focused on the needs of communities and residents. So I'm going to ask Dominic to jump in and talk a little bit about the programs that we have developed specifically for residents.
Thank you, Sochi. Good afternoon, everyone. As Sochi said, my name is Dominic Tassi. I'm the Deputy Bureau Chief in the county's Bureau of Economic Development, and I want to spend a little time telling you about our programs on the resident assistance side. Next slide, please. First, I want to start with our housing programs. And as Sochi said at the top of the presentation, we really tried to kind of bring data into the initial analysis of how we proceeded across the range of programs. And so when it came to housing, we were seeing significant rent and mortgage delinquency rates. We also took at a lot of different cuts of data across residents and how they were being impacted. And I think one of the key things we saw is that a lot of the households at the lower and moderate income end of the spectrum were disproportionately in occupations at risk due to COVID-19. And so we really felt we needed to get out with some housing assistance in the near term. Next slide, please. Even with the eviction and foreclosure moratoria that were in place and continue to this day, residents had been accumulating a lot of debt to unsustainable levels, and also small landlords were impacted and losing critical income that they needed. So we launched both rent and mortgage assistance programs that provided assistance to residents who could demonstrate adverse impact from the pandemic. Next slide, please. To execute both of these programs, we partnered with our sister agency, the Housing Authority of Cook County, and we were able to leverage their data system that we could customize to actually administer these assistance programs. We covered up to 3 months of either rent or mortgage. And kind of all told, we were able to provide over $16 million to over 2,100 households in Cook County. By embracing equity, as Sochi talked about throughout our programs, we were able to target the resources to those that were most vulnerable, to the economic and public health impacts of the pandemic. We saw strong majorities of recipients being women, people of color, and those with incomes that were below 80% of the area median income. Next slide, please. Providing the financial assistance was critical, but we also recognized that it wasn't the only type of housing assistance that was needed to help address the significant number of residents that were dealing with threat or fear of eviction or concerns about foreclosure, even with moratoria in place. But also mounting consumer debt, the county launched the Cook County Legal Aid for Housing and Debt program back in November. It provided free legal assistance to those facing the issues that I just mentioned, the vast majority of whom don't have any sort of legal representation. Since that November launch, or through January, the program had served almost 1,200 folks, and it's only ramped up since then. As the programs continue to gain traction and awareness throughout the county. And the services that we provided through the legal aid program so far have been important, but it's going to become even more critical as the various moratoria on eviction and foreclosure begin to expire and the eviction and foreclosure cases start to increase. So we've taken specific steps to link this program with the different housing assistance programs we've launched. More recently with some of the new emergency rental assistance funding, we put out another round of rental assistance and kind of created a two-way street between the legal aid program and the rental assistance work, because they can certainly complement each other. Next slide, please. You heard Sochi talk a lot about our programs supporting businesses, but we also felt that it was critical to create some programs to help the many workers that were displaced by COVID, and also to help workers in upskilling and retraining workers. So we invested $4 million in support of a range of workforce development efforts. Next slide, please. Our key partner in this work was the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, who enhanced a number of their services, not just job training, but also career counseling and job placement services. We're able to help almost 500 participants, through these different programs. We saw interest across all types of sectors. You can see the breakdown in the pie chart. And I wanted to tell you about one example. James, who was out of work and couldn't find a job due to COVID. He had come from a warehouse background and didn't know what advanced manufacturing was all about. He went through a hands-on training program, through the Chicago Workforce Partnership, supported by our program. He earned the skills to find work as a CNC operator, passed his 3 exams and received a national credential. And he's now, at work in that field, operating CNC machines. So just one success story. We were pleased with what we were able to pull together, together with our workforce partner. Next slide, please. And the last bucket I want to talk to you about are a range of our social service programs. 3 in particular: homeless sheltering, food assistance, and direct cash assistance. Across these programs, we partnered with a number of both local and national nonprofits. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we were able to achieve. Again, we kind of use data to inform our thinking about which programs to launch, as well as just understanding kind of the situations on the ground. In particular, we were seeing huge increases in food insecurity, especially among households with children. Also recognizing that within COVID, the congregate sheltering model that many of our homeless agencies were using needed to shift into a hotel-based model of providing shelter, which was very helpful and effective, but also a fairly extensive type of intervention. So that led us to launch, a few types of our social service programs. Next slide, please. Actually, you can go to the next slide as well. So first on the shelter side, so she mentioned kind of early in the crisis, we were able to put some very quick support before all the CARES Act infusion came along. But as I mentioned, one of the core things we did was help support the shelters in providing a safe place for those without a home to be, and keep them safe from COVID, help prevent community spread as well. And, through this work, we were able to provide over 200,000 shelter nights, over 600,000 meals, forge some great local partnerships with restaurants to kind of create a win-win there for both helping those who needed it, but also helping the local economy as well. On the food assistance side, our key partner was the Greater Chicago Food Depository, our regional food bank here in the Cook County area. We were seeing huge increases, over 50% increase in households come into the food pantry network, 70% increase in the pounds of food that the partners were putting out. And so our funds were able to help support, almost 100 different pantry sites across many of our Cook County suburbs, provided additional cold storage to help with that increased volume at a number of partner sites. And we're continuing that work on the food assistance side, right up to today. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, I think we crafted a number of different types of service programs, but I think we also recognized that what a lot of folks needed were just some cash assistance to deal with the different sorts of challenges they were facing. And we really wanted to support an approach that trusts and invests directly in our residents and families. And we forged a partnership with a national organization called the Family Independence Initiative that's been doing this sort of work for over 20 years. And we crafted a program that provided $600 payments straight to residents, based on a COVID impact. I think one of our lessons, I'd say overall, is trying to do as much as you can to stay on top of your different programs so you can be flexible. And I think that's one success story on the cash assistance program, which we initially launched with a $2 million program, thought we could help about 3,300 or so households. We saw huge demand for the program when it first opened. We were able to add an additional $2 million, which still wasn't enough for the demand we were seeing. So we were able to reallocate some of our resources, and in the end, provided over $8 million of support. We initially thought we'd be doing it as a lottery, but we were able to provide the assistance to every eligible applicant. And again, we saw, kind of our equity targets show up in the eventual recipients of the data. It was about 70% female, over 80% people of color, with a median income of only $18,000. So we were really glad to see we were getting the resources to the folks that really needed it the most. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back to Sochi.
Thanks, Tom. So this slide just sort of summarizes all of our work, and although it has been quite an undertaking, I think it was critical that we really took this holistic approach of supporting both residents and businesses during this past year. So we will continue to grow and learn from the work that we did, but continue to look at making sure that we have housing stability and meet the essential critical needs of residents. We'll continue with our small business work, and also job training and placement. Workforce will be key going forward. Next slide, please. And one of the most important things to note is that we're constantly evolving. We're learning, we're looking at the data. We are talking to our partners to assess what worked, what didn't work, So remaining data-driven in the approach is definitely key. We recently released our community recovery impact reports that represents the outcomes and program highlights from the work the county and our network of nearly 100 partners completed in distributing the 77 million in CARES funding. So I encourage everyone to read that report just to understand the various types of programs that have been really critical during this past year. This information that we have shared and continue to share with our community partners, philanthropic partners, and the private sector, because it is important that this data is used as a foundation to continue to grow our collective efforts. And I cannot state enough that partnerships have been key to the success of our work this past year. Especially now as we begin planning our efforts for the ARPA funding and new infrastructure funding, these partners and their expertise and the information that they're gathering as they talk to businesses and residents, that's key as we develop our next rounds of programming. So next slide, please. What I can say is that I'm extremely proud that we have been able to accomplish all of this in unimaginable speed. I mean, oftentimes people think of government as bureaucratic layers of organizations, but we really have a group of committed public servants that are figuring out how to do the most with whatever funding we have available. We are asking ourselves, how do we do things better? Looking at data, and we're pivoting whenever we need to pivot. But our work is not done. Our plans for accelerating the momentum moving forward continues. It is not enough to simply repair and recover. And one thing that I will note to those on this webinar today, as you embark on your own planning efforts, I really encourage everyone to foster the partnerships that you have, inform new ones, be innovative, explore thinking outside of the box, engage all levels of your teams to embrace innovation. And most importantly, invest in the people around you, in your partners, and be inclusive in your practices. At Cook County, I look forward to continuing to advance equity by building on this solid foundation we have developed with NPNA and our extended network of partners. This work would not have been able to get done without them. The pandemic may dictate our present, but it will not write our future. I'm confident that we have the vision and also the will to rebound better, stronger, and more equitably. And I encourage anyone to reach out to us to discuss our learnings, to learn from what we have learned, and to challenge your teams to really partner with community organizations to undertake this difficult time and come out of it stronger. So with that, I will turn it back to
It's me at NPNA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. It's just really been our pleasure to be a partner with Cook County Community Recovery Initiative. And we have some great questions that have come in so far, and we have just a few minutes to maybe handle 2 or 3 of them. So the first question is, it sounds like, you know, we can really look at a comprehensive sort of approach to assistance, and would love to see kind of what processes you used or internal thinking that you would share with other municipalities who are looking to build out cash assistance programs to make sure that money gets into the hands of people who need it the most.
I will let Dom jump in on that one.
Sure.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. I mean, I think really on the cash assistance side, you know, it's something I guess I'd say it's something the county had some interest in, but I think some of the federal resources that we typically get, aren't necessarily good fits for providing direct assistance to individuals. So I think when the CARES Act and we were using coronavirus relief funds, CRF, for most of these programs, came along and had the ability to include direct financial assistance, with a COVID impact, of course. We really thought it was a type of intervention that made a lot of sense. I'd say key for us was finding a great partner. We had the Family Independence Initiative, who had been doing work, not necessarily one-time cash assistance, but other types of cash assistance in the Chicago area and other places around the country, that we were familiar with, and had been doing some other work already in COVID response. So it was just a great partnership opportunity to work with them, who had they have a great technical system for administering the cash assistance side. They have great tools, kind of real-time dashboards to see what's going on with the program. We were able to customize the parameters around the cash assistance, to require different COVID impact documentation. We were able to target it to we chose to target it to income pre-COVID, in terms of the eligible population. So those were some of the main factors we thought about, just being the ability to customize to fit our program. And I think key to it is finding a good partner technically to be able to get the money out quickly.
Thank you, Dominic. The next question is around the Small Business Assistance Program applications. How did you ensure language access in the applications itself, or work with partners to help identify the application in different languages? Can you talk a little bit about language access?
Absolutely. So again, going back to our partners, so we definitely had our applications that were in multiple languages, but critical to that was also having webinars that were in different languages, so that our partners were able to share that information with businesses. So we translated many of our webinars into multiple languages. We had our partners that were multilingual as well. That has all been critical, because we wanted to make sure that these resources were targeted to individuals that typically have a hard time accessing these resources. So our webinars, our partners, were all there really holding hands of business owners in order to access these resources.
Thank you, Soshil. The next question, and you've mentioned this quite a bit on this webinar, is around data collection. And so any lessons learned that you have for other municipalities on the importance of data collection? You have some great data in the report, which we will be sending along to the participants and also posting up on the NPNA website. But what advice would you have for other municipalities and even your partners around data collection?
That is a great question. You have to be intentional since the beginning. When you're designing your program, you need to think through it and have partners that are helping you think through how you're going to showcase what you did at the end of whatever period. So in each of our programs, we sat with partners, and in the agreement, we talked about data. We listed out the type of data, because we knew that we had to remain accountable to our taxpayers, to our constituents, and be able to talk about the impact of each of our programs. The other part was that we wanted to learn from each of these programs. We wanted to understand what programs were going to be most impactful. So if you don't have those data sets, you won't be able to validate or really assess which programs you can continue on. Because we're fortunate that right now we have a lot of federal funding that can help us deploy these programs. But later on, when we're trying to figure out which programs are the most impactful, we really need to have that data behind us, and that will help us dedicate resources to programs that are really making a difference.
Thank you. And our last question before we wrap up, I noticed there's a strong emphasis on equity in everything that you're doing. So looking at comprehensive approach to housing, to small business, to addressing food insecurity. And so I would love to talk about how Cook County has really been able to reach immigrant and other communities of color as part of your equity framework for this work and for this work moving forward.
Well, we were fortunate that prior to COVID, one of the big projects that was under the Bureau of Economic Development was managing the county's census project. So because of that initiative, we really had a robust network of community organizations that were already equipped and very knowledgeable in targeting and talking to individuals that typically are hard to count. So because of that robust network of, well, they were census grantees, we really brought them into the fold. We utilized that network of partners, trained them, provided them information of all of our programs so that they shared that with their networks, with their organizations, and were able to target that information to the individuals that we typically would want to partner with. So that group of over 100 census grantees was key in us really reaching the immigrant community and the communities that typically are hard to count in our census efforts. So you need to leverage whatever networks you have and really build that partnership, train them in order for them to get that information out. They were critical, and they're continuing to be part of our overall network to get information out to residents and businesses during this pandemic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Soshila. I think you can't underestimate the importance of census tables and rolling out everything from economic recovery to vaccine equity. It's really an important point you bring up for all of our partners. We thank you so much for you sharing today some of the learnings of the program, the successes, and also the next chapter of the program with our larger NPNA community and in general with the larger individual groups who are interested in economic recovery. You can find more about this report for Cook County's work for Rebuilding Stronger Together Impact Report for CCCSI, and the recording and slides will be available to all of our participants today. I want to thank Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle and all of the leadership of your staff. As you said, Soshil, they are lifetime public servants who really are looking at community-wide approach to economic recovery, and we thank you for your leadership and hope that today's webinar will be informative for our partners across the country. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to continuing this partnership and these conversations as we all look toward economic recovery in the coming year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.